Sometimes the most revealing part of a hearing isn't the testimony, it's how certainty, emotion, and authority collide in the room. This exchange takes place during a congressional hearing, but to understand it fully, it helps to look beyond the words and observe the room itself. Representative Walkinshaw opens by acknowledging the setting and the tension surrounding it. His remarks immediately signal that this is not just a policy discussion, but a moment shaped by emotion, atmosphere, and audience reaction. Applause and verbal affirmations punctuate the statements, indicating that the room is already aligned, not debating whether something is wrong, but what that wrong represents. From a third-angle perspective, one detail stands out early. The speaker emphasizes that his constituents want both enforcement and fairness. This pairing is important. It suggests that the debate is not framed as law versus compassion, but as a question of how power is exercised. The language then shifts sharply. Specific images are invoked: masked officers, disappearances, protesters, mothers, children. These are not policy descriptions, they are moral signals. Whether one agrees or disagrees, the purpose is clear: to move the discussion from abstract enforcement into human consequence. A key question for listeners is this: when lawmakers use vivid imagery, are they clarifying reality or signaling how they want that reality understood?
But thank you, Ranking Member Jayapal and the Minnesota delegation. This is my first visit to Minnesota. I hope my next visit will be under better circumstances. And I want to thank our witnesses and community members here and across Minnesota who have been doing their patriotic duty as Americans to stand up to this administration. Yes. My constituents, the folks I represent in Virginia and the Minnesotans that I talk to, want secure borders. They want our immigration laws, all of our laws, to be enforced, but they want it done fairly, humanely, and in a way that's consistent with our values as Americans. They don't want masked secret police. They don't want disappearances. They don't want peaceful protesters shackled and pregnant women dragged through the street. They don't want guns pulled on children. And they don't want unarmed mothers shot and killed in their cars. It's clear to me, based on what I've heard today, that what is happening here in Minnesota is not about immigration enforcement. It is not about corruption. It sure as hell is not about public safety. That's right. It's about political retribution, power, and intimidation.
The speaker then makes a definitive claim that what is happening is not about immigration, corruption, or public safety, but about power and intimidation. This is a moment where the room's temperature changes. Applause follows. The statement is no longer exploratory, it is declarative. From an observational angle, this raises another question. At what point does a hearing shift from fact-finding to positioning? The address to Speaker Johnson is also notable. It is less about expecting a response and more about placing a marker on the record. Even without a reply, the statement establishes boundaries: who supports what and under what conditions. Then the tone changes again. The focus moves from political accountability to operational risk. Training timelines are compared: years for local police officers versus weeks for federal enforcement agents. This shift grounds the discussion in something tangible: preparation, readiness, and consequence. The question posed to the police chief is calm, but the implication is serious. What happens when authority outpaces training? The response is measured but stark: stress, insecurity, quicker escalation to force, and violations of legal rights. There is no rhetoric here, just a description of what can occur when individuals are placed in high-stakes situations without sufficient preparation.
And that's why Congress must step up and rein in this mass deportation, mass destruction machine that Trump has assembled. And because we know the Trump administration and Secretary Noem won't hold anyone accountable, we have to be crystal clear today that House Democrats will hold people accountable. We will hold people accountable for the laws that have been broken, for the rights that have been violated. And I want to talk directly to Speaker Johnson if he's taking a break from doing Donald Trump's bidding. Speaker Johnson, if you bring next week to the floor of the House a Department of Homeland Security funding bill that doesn't end these abuses, you can pass it without my vote. You won't have my vote for that. Chief McCarthy, you've gotten a lot of questions about training. I'm going to ask another one. You went through the timeline of someone who wants to become a member of your police department. I was adding up all of the requirements. It sounded like years before you would have that officer on their own, serving, patrolling in your community. We know that ICE is sending folks out with 6 to 8 weeks of training. From your perspective, your decades of experience, what could go wrong if you put an officer out on the streets in your community with just 6 to 8 weeks of training?
Thank you for that question. And I think we're seeing it. Everything can go wrong. When officers are put in positions where they are stressed and now they're insecure, they're going to be quicker to move to physical violence. And what you're finding is that if they don't know their legal rights and authority, they're going to violate the rights and authority of others. And so it is a very dangerous situation.
Thank you. I yield back.
This contrast is subtle but important. The most emotionally charged statements come from elected officials. The most restrained language comes from professional testimony. And that leads to a final question worth considering. What does it say when the strongest warnings in a heated hearing come not from speeches, but from quiet assessments of risk? As observers, reading the room means noticing not just what is said, but how certainty, emotion, and authority move through the space. The exchange reveals a deeper tension between urgency and restraint, between accountability and escalation, and between political messaging and operational reality. And often it is in that tension, not in the applause lines, where the most important insights reside. If you found this analysis helpful, you're welcome to subscribe.